So I'm curious if you had to zero in, to where you'd get the most bang for the buck.
Yep.
When you look at the health of America, what do you see as the major impediments, the major problems?
Yeah. If you look at the top 10 killers, you can actually thematically lump them all into what I call the cardiometabolic crisis, where that encompasses the problems that are overtly metabolic, like type 2 diabetes, which is a top 10 killer. I think it comes in around number 6 or 7, but also number 1, which is heart disease. And now there are others in the top 10, like Alzheimer's disease, for example, that you wouldn't think. You'd say, okay, well, Ben's not including Alzheimer's disease in these cardiometabolic killers, and yet I actually am. Even certain forms of cancers are viewed increasingly as a metabolic problem. So it might be that I'm the guy with the hammer and so I see the nail, but the nail is poor metabolic health. And that's certainly the focus of my efforts. But I like how you framed the question. As much as metabolic health is an underlying issue or a common soil from which all of these noxious plants are growing that we call diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary problems. The alternative view isn't that these are each distinct problems. It's just that they're various manifestations of the same problem, namely insulin resistance being the most common disorder. Within the United States, a study published out of University of North Carolina a number of years ago found that 88% of adults have at least one part of what we call the metabolic syndrome, which is a kind of cluster of complications. Interestingly and tellingly, what we call the metabolic syndrome used to be called the insulin resistance syndrome. Mm-hmm. And as much as you framed it from a Western view, just to help people appreciate this, we're maybe around in the US, number 20 or so with type 2 diabetes worldwide. The Middle East, they're experiencing these problems far worse than we are. Even Southeast Asia, these countries where you'd look at the population and think, well, you look healthy, you're only maybe a little overweight.
Yeah.
But there are ethnic differences where body fat, which is so important to this, will predispose people to these metabolic problems at varying levels. But to answer the question succinctly, the problem is a cardiometabolic crisis. And at the heart of this is this very poorly understood, poorly known, poorly discussed problem called insulin resistance.
Yeah, okay.